Well, as you can see, I've moved outdoors to try to do a Tales from the 1970s, and you probably will notice there's some cats around, and that's the problem with doing things out here is the cats are going to take an interest in it. So maybe I can get through this video without them destroying it, but we'll see. So left off that returned from Albuquerque. It was now January 1972. That hitchhiking trip over Christmas, and I had mentioned that 1972 would be an epic year, and so I had decided when I got back to go to the local junior college. I had not been in school. I had not been in school since I graduated the May before from high school. So I decided, because of a friend of mine, to go ahead and enroll in the junior college. Well, there was a friend of his that was a teacher assistant there, and his ex-girlfriend had arranged for a guy from the Outward Bound schools to come and do a presentation there at the college. And so I went over to see what that was all about, and this guy from the Outward Bound schools showed a 16 millimeter movie, not a video, movie, of all the Outward Bound schools in the United States, which I don't know, 7 or 8 of them, it seemed like. And gee, I really wish I'd love to see that movie again. It's probably disappeared forever, but it was a really good video. And if you've never seen or don't know about Outward Bound schools, at least go and look that up. You know, go Google that and see what Outward Bound schools are about. So anyway, I went to this presentation. I hear about what it costs to go on one of these Outward Bound courses, and it's kind of pricey. And so I start to leave, and as I'm about to walk out the door, this guy says, "And we have scholarships available." So I stop and I turn around, I go back in, and I say, "Well, what does it take to get a scholarship? What are the requirements for a scholarship?" He goes, "Well, it's just based on who needs the bucks." You know, oh, okay. So I go through the process. I sign up and make application to get a scholarship to go on an Outward Bound course. Well, I get a $250 scholarship. Well, back in those days, an Outward Bound course for a 23-day standard course was $425, I believe it was, plus $5 for a bus ticket, which would take you from the city out to the trailhead. And so um, that was pretty good scholarship. So I'm going to go to Outward Bound in July. And the big problem there was again in Fort Worth, Texas, and I have to get to Seattle, Washington, and plus I have to come up with about $170. So my brother in Berkeley shows up, and he hitchhikes out, and he buys a 1959 Rambler station wagon. He has stuff that he left behind in Fort Worth when he moved, and he some of that stuff he left behind belonged to his now ex-wife. So we load that stuff up. We go to Houston to drop that off, and then we head across. We go to Austin, Texas, spend the night with an old college friend of his, and head out on across West Texas. And it's about there in Van Horn, Texas, that we make a stop for gas, fuel, and that's where we discover the first problem with this car. And that first problem with the car was when there was a hose the body of the car down to the gas tank. It had a big split, so when you put the fuel pump in there and try to fill it with gas, it just all pour out on the ground. So we had to mess with that, and we made it on to Tucson and spent the night. We got up the next morning and took it into a shop, and I guess they fixed that pipe. I don't remember that, But they discovered another problem, that the distributor had a vacuum hose missing. There was a vacuum hose that went to the side, and that had something to do with I guess the idle or something on the car, but it didn't run right, and so we couldn't fix that, and so on we went. So we went on through the night and spent the night on somewhere on the side of the road. I think maybe it was up the Colorado River. I think that's where it was, going into California. And we went to Los Angeles, and we're going over the mountains, and again going down the grapevine, which I've talked about before. And that's when my brother decided he wanted me to drive. Well, I couldn't drive a stick shift, a standard transmission, which is what this car had. So I climbed over the seat into the back, moved over. He slid over, kept his hands on the steering wheel and his foot on the throttle, and I slipped over the seat and slid in under the steering wheel. And as I was driving, and that, as I said, the car had a problem, and one of the problems is it would keep, if you let off on the gas, it would stall. So if you let off on the gas because you're going too fast down the hill, the engine would stall. Then you'd have to bump start it and try to use the engine to slow you down, and so it was kind of crazy going down the grapevine. Well, we made it down the grapevine, made it across, and Interstate 5 had just opened. There were no gas stations, nothing along the way, and so it had just opened, and we took it for the first time up to the Bay Area, and we made it to the Bay Area. So I had a big portion of the trip behind me. Well, the next day, my brother, after we get there, my brother says, "Look, I got to go to Sacramento, and I'll drop you off here on University Avenue while I go run some errands for an hour or so. Then I'll come by, and if you haven't found a really good ride, I'll take you to Sacramento." I go, "Okay, that sounds good to me." So I had made me a cardboard sign that said Seattle on it, and he drives me to University Avenue, and I get out of the car and I hold the sign up, reach in and get my backpack, set it down on the street there, say goodbye and close the door, and I turn around and there's a guy standing right there next to me, and he goes, "You going to Seattle?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, and I go, "Well, do you have a car?" Because I mean, he's this guy standing next to me on the sidewalk. He goes, "Oh yeah, I got a car. I saw your sign," and I pulled over. So we walked over, and sure enough, he's got a VW Bug. And this fella is going from Berkeley straight up all the way to Vancouver, British Columbia, picking up Canada Highway 1 and going all the way across to upstate New York. And he says, "You can ride with me as far as you want." And I went, "Whoa." So we take off. It's nighttime. As we get, we go to Sacramento. We're going up Interstate 5, and then by then it's nighttime, and we're going up around Mount Shasta. And I look out, and I see what I think in my mind is some fireworks. And I turn away, and I go, "Wait a minute, there's no fireworks out there." And I turn back, and it's a shooting star, a meteorite, a falling star, and it's still falling even from the time I turn back, and it's still falling. It breaks into 3 pieces and then just disappears. Still the most spectacular um, shooting star meteorite I've ever seen. It was just incredible. So we travel on through the night, and we sometime that night we get up to the Oregon border, and we stop, and there's just inside of Oregon there's a rest area, and so we stop there, and I sleep on the picnic table, and I think he sleeps in the car, but we spend the night there, and then next morning he gets the idea that I think I'd like to take that Redwood Highway. So just into Oregon, there's a highway that goes back through Oregon down into California and meets the Coast Highway. And he wants to go through that, and so we do, and it is a wonderful drive. And then we're driving along the coast. We stop at the beach in Coos Bay, Oregon. Continue on. We finally decide it's too slow going, and we cut back over to I-5. I think just south of Eugene. We continue on and get to Portland, and we go to a grocery store and get some stuff to eat, and go on. And seems like it's somewhere just inside of somewhere up there in Washington. There's again a rest area. We spend the night, and it's drizzling, raining, and I spend the night on top of the picnic table. Next morning we get up, drive on into Seattle, and he drops me off in Seattle. The odd thing, in a way, it's odd because the next day was when the Outward Bound course started, and I don't remember ever being nervous about the time, about whether I was going to make it. So here it is, the evening before, and I make it to Seattle, just in time, just in time. And so I'll end this part here, and we'll go tell the tale of meeting with the Outward Bound course and my 23 days in the Glacier Peak Wilderness of the North Cascades of the state of Washington. And that was just a part of the adventure. So hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again.